148 cases, reported cases that is, involving students in relation to drugs have been reported in schools throughout the country. This calls for serious concern and one that needs to be addressed not just by parents and family members, but the community as a whole. With me tonight to talk more about this is Mr. Joshua Naiselia, Senior Education Officer of the National Substance and Abuse Advisory Council, Ella Tukutukulevu, Assistant Director of Child Services, and Anare Masitambua, the officer in charge of the drug intelligence of the Fiji Police Force, rather. Thank you for coming tonight. And clearly, this is a big concern. One thing that I was curious to know about was the services that each of you provide. In this particular case, the National Substance Abuse Advisory Council. What is your role in all of this?
Our role, our unit is under the Ministry of Education, and we are a statutory unit, and what the role that we normally play is trying to conduct awareness and training in all our schools and also in the communities with issues related to preventing students from using drugs and other substances. Not only that, we are also trying to, because of the number of issues that are coming up in schools now, like violence and the use of cyberspace by students, the internet, and also other social issues that students are facing. We have extended our service in trying to address also these problems in our schools.
So you initially started with drugs and then started branching, your scope started getting bigger.
Yes.
And what is the capacity of social welfare and all this?
Thank you, Matthew. For us at the Department of Social Welfare, I look after the Child Services Unit, and the unit is one of the units under the Department of Social Welfare. And so the role basically is just legislative responsibilities to the care and protection of children. So when we are talking about, when we say child services, child services covers child protection. There are other programs. Another program is the residential care for children. We also have juvenile justice programs. And one of the big role of the Child Services Unit is the Secretariat to the National Coordinating Committee on Children, or the NCCC. And members of the NCCC are right here before us, Police, Ministry of Health, Education, and we also have other agencies that work directly or even indirectly with children. So anything that's affecting children, the mandate lies with the Department of Social Welfare. For example, there are certain various legislations that cover children. So one of these is the Juveniles Act, and in the Juveniles Act, it stipulates the role of the Director of Social Welfare, the powers that the Director of Social Welfare has in the care and protection of children, and this power cascades down to field officers that work under the Department of Social Welfare. So if we are talking about the care of children, this collaboration amongst us stakeholders. So we are at the receiving end because we receive referrals from our partners like the Ministry of Education, Police, and other agencies that receive cases of children.
So this collaborative work between all of you, the police also go with NASEC into schools. Is that how you pronounce it, NASEC?
Yes.
Within the schools?
Yes.
What is your capacity in that sense?
Capacity in regards to schools, actually when we get the reports, we actually call them first.
Yeah.
And after that, if we move into the schools, we actually just move into the schools, we call them if they are there. And there is a law that under the Juveniles Act that we actually notify the social welfare of the juvenile that we are taking. And we are also actually mindful in regards to the future of those kids. That is why we have the juvenile unit with the Fiji Police Force.
So you go also, it's an educational point where both of you, you will touch on drugs and its effect, or is that something that you do as well?
We also, what we are doing, Matthew, when we work in collaboration with the police, we we make use of the service that they are providing in substance abuse, drugs
Yeah.
and substance abuse, cyber safety, and also sexual offences.
Offences.
They normally come together with us to the schools when we go to the school and conduct awareness. And the social welfare, they come in terms of, because they are the only one who were empowered regarding the child welfare decree. So that is if there's any case in school, we normally report the case to the social welfare.
So any case involving a child in whatever services the child is acting, that service must report to social welfare first.
Yes.
Yes.
And then does that get reported to the DPP's office afterwards? Or is it the DPP's and then?
I think under it is the child welfare decree.
Yeah.
This was passed in 2010. So the decree is basically about mandatory reporting
Okay.
of child cases to the Permanent Secretary Social Welfare.
Yeah.
And the decree also spells out the professionals. And the decree says all professionals. So the professionals are teachers, the police officers, lawyers, social welfare officers, labor, and so forth. In 2013, there was an amendment to the decree. Initially, when it came out, the teachers were not included.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it might have been an oversight. But in 2013, there was an amendment to the decree, and that now includes the teachers.
So did this decree come out of the fact that there have been a lot of drug abuse in schools in relation to students, or did it come out of something else?
The decree was the initiative of the Ministry of Health.
Yeah.
Mainly because at that time, Ministry of Health was receiving various cases of malnutrition
Oh,
and
okay.
other cases besides malnutrition. And so this was a decree to, a mechanism put in place so that it allows us to work with parents. Yeah? So though it was the initiative of the Ministry of Health, when it was passed, the reporting was to the Permanent Secretary of Social Welfare because of the mandate, because of the Juveniles Act, and so all parties can report to social welfare, and of course it does not stop them from reporting to their, seniors or. Yeah.
Okay.
So they can work with their partners as well, but the decree just says notify the PS social welfare first.
And does NASEC cover every school in Fiji,
Yes,
including the outer islands,
including the islands, all the
Okay.
primary and secondary school.
primary and secondary school? And that's a large number. How big is your team?
At the moment, the unit, there are only 13 of us,
13.
one area. And that's the reason why we work together with our stakeholders in trying to address the different issues that are coming up in school. And still on that, Matthew, now when the teachers are included in the decree,
Yeah,
they have been empowered to also report cases.
they have to.
Yeah, in the past, when they see cases, they just ignored it. But now, when there's a case of child sexual abuse or any kind of abuse relating to the children in school, they are mandated to report.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll just go to a quick break now,
Yes.
and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, Joshua, we're talking about NASEC and the different, the roles and responsibilities that you have, your relationship with social welfare police, how you've been working together. One thing I wanted to know, when you go into schools, what do you touch on? What's some of the things that you go in depth with?
Naka, Matthew, these are some of the issues that have been coming up in schools, and I would like to talk about it while my colleagues are also listening. They may also contribute. Number one is drugs. Now students, both in primary and secondary school, they're using drugs. The kind of drugs that they are using, for example, is kava, cigarette, alcohol, inhalant, marijuana, and also some cases of hard drugs.
When you say inhalant, what exactly are you talking about?
The type of inhalant that students are currently using now is mostly glue.
Glue.
Yeah, glue and also premix benzene.
And has there been measures or policies put in place to stop the sale of glue or try to prevent the sale of glue
At the
to
moment,
minors?
we have the drug policy in school, which covers all those.
Yeah.
And also, all schools, they also should be all drug-free. That's why the declaration that was made in 2010. And I believe my colleague from the police can talk more about the glue, the inhalant
Yeah.
decree that is now pending before the Solicitor General's office.
Okay.
Because we've been working together in trying to bring this legislation to place to try and stop the retailers from selling
To kids.
the glue, the glue to the students especially. Something like the tobacco
Yeah.
control laws. Those are the things. And sex-related issues that are coming up in school, for example, sexual harassment, defilement, rape and attempted rape, sexting, poking, and teenage pregnancy. And when we talk about violence, this is one particular issue that is concerning us. Bullying, cyberbullying, punching, beating, slapping, swearing, and name calling. And the other issues, apart from the three that I've highlighted, is attempted suicide, suspension from school, dropping out, finding another school, and mental problem.
So with
So
all those other issues you
these-
just recently highlighted, how do you support students in those cases?
Now, once the teachers, when the head teacher of the school heads notify us,
Yeah.
we can either come in
Okay.
or we refer the cases to our stakeholders. So, for example, to our stakeholders, if there are cases of sexual abuse or any kind of form of abuse to student in school, we notify. We fill the CWD form, the Child Welfare Decree form, and we notify the social welfare. Who will later on notify the police if there are any cases of abuse.
With abuse cases, do they come for you for counseling, or do you refer them to another service provider?
Thank you, Matthew. For us at the department, we are not really counselors.
Okay.
But we can always advise, we guide. But because of the requirements of the Child Welfare Decree, when a case is referred to us, that's when we will refer to, say for example, if it's a case from the north and it's received at the office, we have a national database. So the CWD, one of the requirements is for us to maintain a national database and a register. So that is what sits at the Department of Social Welfare. The case gets recorded, and straight after we would again refer the case to the respective divisions. So it's at the divisional level or district level that they will work with their partners. So if the police had not been notified, then of course we'll get in touch with sexual offences. Not us, not at headquarter level, but at the divisional and district level where the abuse has happened. And so sometimes when cases come, we may counsel, but most of the time, these services is it's contracted to other organizations, other agencies. For example, Empower Pacific and MSP, when it comes to sexual offences.
So those are where the referred cases usually get.
Yeah.
But just to go back on what we had spoken about, Andrea, with Joshua on inhalants.
Yes.
So the legislation that will be put in place, could you give us more on that?
Okay, for the inhalants, we went around in 2013.
Yeah.
After 2013, a consultation around Fiji. We actually went with the Ministry of Education, the NASAC, and we went around explaining about the properties that are there in the glue itself, glue and other inhalants, for them actually to see the dangers that are there in sniffing or abusing these substances, so that the general public could give their views in regards to this, because the glue is actually also used for repairing shoes and other things, and it is actually legal. So if there is a law in place, it will also have an effect on the company. So with a law that...
Are they looking at a fine, or is it jail time?
Yeah, it's actually what we're looking at, fines.
Fines, eh?
To those, and also in that act, we actually pick out the places where these things should be sold. For example, alcohol.
Yeah.
They have license to sell this.
So something like glue would have to be in what, hardware store?
Yeah, hardware store. There are certain places for this, actually licensed to sell these substances.
So given what you're working with now, what would the fine be? Is it somewhere between 1,000 to Or you're looking at
Actually 5,000.
5,000?
5,000, yes.
5,000. So that's
5,000, yes.
for retailers to be wary about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're actually working with Ministry of Education, the Defense, the Attorney General's office.
So effects of inhalants, what would it look like for a child who's been taking inhalants?
Actually, when we see glue,
Yeah.
it's really serious when you see glue.
How does it affect the body?
Actually deprives the body from oxygen,
Oxygen.
itself, and it damages the lungs when they breathe this substance in, because it has toluene, benzene, and all this
Yeah.
dangerous stuff within the glue, and it also damages the internal part of the body when they swallow this substance.
So
Actually, after sniffing, it affects the lungs, and also when they chew it.
so if it affects the lungs, that will
Then-
cause breathing problems
Yeah, breathing
and would
problems.
in turn cause some form of brain damage.
Brain damage, yeah.
Yeah.
Brain damage is actually emphysema comes in, bronchitis and all this stuff, and ending up in
Hospital.
the cancer itself.
Thank you very much for that. We'll go to a quick break now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back to For the Record. All right, so Chusua, just one thing I wanted to highlight. I've been reading up on the policy, the drug policy within schools, and the Ministry of Education, it does not permit the possession, consumption, promotion, or distribution, or sale rather, of any harmful drugs or the abuse of legal drugs such as kava within schools. Now, what about in an official event? How does that work? Obviously, like, let's say a ceremonial event that would involve kava within the school premises, so that's allowed.
Yes, Matthew. The drug policy, that's a Ministry of Education drug policy. What we normally do, we always inform the school heads when there's a policy being released.
Yeah.
For example, in case of drug policy, they need to have their own internal drug policy aligning to the Ministry of Education. Now, with the case of what you are highlighting, the performance of traditional Yangon ceremony of Sibu can be performed to official senior government official if they come to the school for a visit, or dignitaries, dignitaries if they come to the school, they can perform the Sibu. That is allowed and the school itself should be drug free, but we are only giving allowance to only special occasions like that. If there is they need to perform like for example the Sibu, only for one tanwa, and then after that they should complete it. If there's anything after that, after function, they need to take it out of the school compound. But we have been receiving cases that are being reported in that some schools are still going ahead and using the school premises to perform all those kind of.
And it's very noticeable on social media.
Yes,
You see it
yes,
yourself. Usually cases involving students and ex-scholars.
Yes.
How do you control something like that?
That will be totally up to the school heads, because the school committees, most of the school committees, most of the schools, they are run by the school committees, school management. We have been working with them in trying to strengthen that policy, because the school is an environment of learning. We normally tell them, because anything that is to be done in school, it has to be related to learning. Because if they are portraying a different picture to the students, it can also encourage the students to go ahead and do the same thing, like using drugs like that in school. But we normally remind them of the policy of the drug, especially the drug policy.
And has kava been ever linked to any such sexual abuse case, or has there been any linkages in that sense? Can the cases where kava, the consumption of kava or too much of it in sexual abuse cases?
No, I haven't. We do not have any record in regards to that. Regards to cover.
Is there something that the social welfare would probably have experiences on? Not actually in research detail.
Yeah, not in detail, but I believe there have been cases where, when they heavily consume, when they say that, okay, we were, doped with grog, and and then
Because-
they come across, and then they perform such
Acts,
acts.
Because the reason being, like when most people hear
Mm.
kava, they won't think that or consider it a drug, eh? And well, that's understandable. But with the other drugs that you have highlighted, what is the growing one right now? What is the one that calls for concern within schools that students are engaging in? Apart from marijuana and glue sniffing, what has started to rise?
Cigarette smoking.
Cigarette smoking.
Cigarette smoking seems to be the most common one that is being used now by students in school. And when we talk about polydrug user, normally when you consume yangon or kava,
Yeah.
sometimes, most of the times, they'll get together with cigarette smoking.
Cigarettes.
That's the concern that we normally address with students in school. And usually the normal trend after that, we go for a wash down when, you know, and then alcohol comes in. And then when they drink alcohol, they consume cigarette again. So polydrug user, it has a different effect on our body, especially in when we talk about the students. So when we are creating awareness in school, we normally highlight this so that students can make a good decision, an informed decision regarding the use of these drugs, because it can affect them. Because when they're in school, there's a goal that they need to achieve. So when they allow themselves to use drugs, it can stop them from achieving those goals.
With students, on what he had said, like one thing that I was interested to know about, the cases that are reported to you, are they reported by the school, or are they reported by students, or are these done through investigations that the police are doing in relation to students and the cases with drugs and the arrests?
Okay, in regards to the students, sometimes the teachers themselves, they call us direct.
Okay.
And most of the cases come from the National Substance Abuse, in which actually we send our police officers to investigate.
And how do the cases get referred to you?
The school heads normally, if this is in regards to illegal drugs,
Okay.
marijuana and other hard drugs, maybe ASP Mr. Book can elaborate more on that. Once the school heads inform us, if it is an illegal drug, we normally refer the case to the police. In any district, in any particular school, we normally call the police in for them to come into the school and remove the drug if they suspect, if there is a kind of drug, hard drug, especially a drug or illegal drug. That's how we work with it. But for the legal drugs, we normally tell the school to follow the school policy on how to discipline students. If they are caught smoking, suspension may be the maximum of 10 days. Or they can call in the parents, or they can refer the students for counseling. Those are some of the mechanisms they've been placed in trying to help the students when they involve themselves in using, especially the legal drugs.
For us, I think we've also received referrals on substance abuse. In 2012, we've received referrals from the police.
Okay.
And for us, any case that has to do with children in the school, that we would refer to the schools. So they can handle that. But also it is done in collaboration with us as well. For example, there are various reasons why these children, commit to such offenses. For sometimes, for some students, it is right there in the home.
Yeah.
And they have easy access to that. For some, after counseling or after case working with the children, then you find out that sometimes it is their family background that has caused them to resort to such things. So if it happens in the school, and if the school refers to us, sometimes for quicker actions we would refer directly to NASAC. We'll ask them to help us deal with the case. In addressing the issues, then we will refer to respective agencies. For example, NASAC, they do drug counseling, substance abuse counseling. Even some students from substance abuse, it sometimes leads them to self-harm and all these other issues.
That
So
is-
again, we refer that
Yeah.
to Lifeline because they specialize in suicide counseling.
That's definitely something I want to touch on
Mm.
shortly after this. But
Mm.
we'll go to a quick break now,
Okay.
and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. You're watching For the Record. So we were speaking about the different referral systems and everything in place. Now, just to go back on some of the things that you point out concerning students and what has come up from drug abuse and what you have linked it to sexual activity or sexual abuse cases. The relation between drug abuse and sexual abuse.
Naka
How is that prevalent in high schools now?
When we talk about the relationship between the two, when students, for example, taking drugs, when they get drunk or when they are high, their decision making is affected.
Okay.
Some of them, when they are high, when they are drunk, they cannot make a rational decision. But the worrying trend now that we are currently facing in the ministry, some of these students who are engaging in sexual-related activities, they are not using drugs.
Mm.
They are sober and they are normal, and that is a concern, especially with the use together of mobile phones and the use of internet. Some of them may be visiting adult site, and this is also a concern. It has been raised by some of the schools in the country, and we are trying our very best to deal with the issue in school by working together with our stakeholders. And it is a concern. How we are trying to tackle this issue is when we identify, we try to get help, assistance from our stakeholders, especially from the counselors in other unit, in other NGOs, and even we have our own counselors in our unit. And maybe we're going to talk more about counseling after this. But that is actually how we are trying to address the issue. We come in and then we try to help out the students.
How about the schools? Because clearly from what you've spoken about, mobile phones, smart technology
Yes.
has allowed students and most young people to gain access not only to what they can find online, but with each other. And that has become apparent with recent videos that have been uploaded on social media, pictures sharing, nude pictures sharing among students. How have you worked with schools? Are they coming up with policies to ban phones from schools altogether? Or are they trying to do more to ensure to teach kids about smart use of smart technology?
At the moment, we have the school mobile phone policy.
Yeah.
We have one for the ministry. And the students in some schools, they may not allow students to bring in their phones. Now, if they want to bring in their phone, there has to be a signed agreement between the parents and the school head. On the time the students can be using that phone, especially for parents who are both working. For them to contact with their children. But otherwise, in other schools, they are not allowed to bring in. But we can see that students still break that. They're still coming in with their mobile phones. There are different ways for them to conceal it, so that teachers cannot find it when they're in school. That is one challenge that we are currently facing, especially with young people.
Does this require the schools, or are they allowed to have regular bag checks or mandatory bag checks? Or is that against the law within the schools?
Actually, if it's in regards to checking their bags and all this, it's actually you are actually crossing to their privacy. Yeah?
Privacy.
Yes.
So
And if there is a policy for them to check, then I think that will be okay with.
So that would be just in cases with relations to drugs that they are allowed to check students' bags, or
Yes, if there is a policy with education to do that.
If there's no policy,
Yes.
then they are not covered.
Covered,
Because to go through the bags, we have the powers to do that.
The police do.
The powers of search,
Okay.
yes, in which we can stop and check anybody that is suspected. Or
So this year alone, which cases were higher? That of drug abuse or that of sexual activity, especially with teenage pregnancies taken into account? Or
What we've seen, Matthew, there's a slight increase in sexual-related activities in comparison to drugs.
To drugs.
To drugs. especially in secondary school. that
And
is a
with
concern.
NASA getting involved as well, your scope obviously was widened from drugs to cyber to
Yes.
sexual activities, sexual abuse rather.
Mm.
What are some of the programs that you have in place to help combat this?
Okay, some of the things that we are currently doing, we have a peer education program that we conduct to the primary and secondary school.
Yeah.
So when we get the data, there are 9 education districts in Fiji. So we look at the 9 education districts and we find out the one with the highest. We try to target those the schools in those in that particular district. So when we conduct training, it's a 3-day training. We ask the head teachers or principal to select student leaders who can
Implement.
who can implement who can help their friends in school.
And how often do you do trainings like this?
We normally do it in term 1 and term 2, because in term 3 they are focusing on the exam. So we go out, especially in term 1 and 2, and then when we target all these schools, these students who come in for training, what we do, we invite our stakeholders to come in and help them, empower them with new skills and knowledge, especially on how they can make decisions, the importance of values, and peer pressure. These are some things that are normally talked about in the training. So when they are going to go back, they are going to help their students, especially the ones that are at risk, because they know some of the students in school, they talk better with their friends. That's one thing we found out. We also have the training for teachers and also the community training for community leaders. And our current program that is currently running now is we are trying to target the parents. Because what we find out, we know that the teachers now, they are not allowed to give corporal punishment.
Yeah.
So when the teachers are not allowed to do that, we are looking back to the home to try and help our parents in empowering them to look at their roles and responsibility, especially in looking after their children.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're talking about programs, for us at the Department of Social Welfare, this year what we noticed is there was high cases of neglect. And so every year we have this celebration called Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect Day. It's an international celebration that falls on the 19th of November. So it's an annual event. And as I mentioned earlier, the National Coordinating Committee on Children, that's the NCCC. This is where we all come together as partners and we discuss issues relating to children or that affects our children. And so from at the national level is that NCCC, the National Coordinating Committee. At every district and divisional level, then they have the interagency committees. So Mr. Naisela is talking about sex-related activities, and for us also there's been high cases of sex-related, and so as for neglect. So this year we have a theme, and it's our tagline is Stronger Families, Safer Children. Yeah? So for that we are addressing parents, and not only that. Once we identify that this is the problem out there, then we also work in partnership with Save the Children Fiji, and they help us train parents and leaders on positive parenting. And that is one program that we are currently rolling out right now, working with communities that we feel are mostly affected by this, the neglect of children. So the children are victims, but then we also believe that families, parents need to be reminded of our roles. So
That's
positive parenting and discipline is
positive parenting. Very interesting. We'll go to a quick break right now, and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. So as we were discussing, with the sexual abuse activity on the rise in high schools, and this is all to do with the use of smart technology, you'd spoken about the different stakeholders that you work with. So in relation to self-harm, suicide, and everything that you were able to link from drug abuse to sexual abuse, who are the other stakeholders? You spoke of Lifeline. Are there any other?
We have Empower Pacific also. We also sometimes we refer cases too, and the new one that we've just come into contact with is the Salvation Army, Salvation Army, they also have an AOD counselors. AOD, that's alcohol and other drug counselors.
Ah, okay.
So some of the cases we are trying also to refer to them because there are two professionals there who can also handle cases. What we have been doing, we told them if there are cases coming to us, especially with hard drugs, we will be needing their help, their assistance, especially if there are students. So we engage all these other stakeholders to try and help us in addressing these issues in school.
Is there any way that the Ministry of Education and the police are working together to try and work with schools, with the Ministry of Education, to, I don't know, create some kind of policy to ensure that students are actually learning in schools and not engaging in other risky behaviors, like with the use of smart technology, in cases where students are taking pictures of themselves with other classmates in uniforms, policies to be in place in case students do that they are taken to task. You know, just a minor penalty or something. Are they working on anything like that at the moment?
Okay, for
This way they could regulate the usage of phones within
yes,
schools.
okay. With the law right now, with cybercrime,
Yeah?
actually we have laws in regards to exhibiting pictures
Yeah.
of the nude pictures.
Nude pictures, yeah.
Also in your phones and all this. All this is already speculated in the new laws that we have.
Yeah.
And now in schools, they have groups like the year 9,
Yeah.
year 10 and all this. And there's actually a guy that actually, just like a leader that actually exchange this thing. You have this and they send their nude pictures across.
Ah.
So when their phone get lost, this is where
The people have access
people's
to.
there.
So.
Or the partner
Ah.
leaves them. So they threaten them, if you leave me, I will exhibit this.
Bread.
So they exhibit these
With me.
pictures. And this is actually really coming up, and not only for the kids, actually with the older
Adults,
people.
Yeah.
That people are actually coming to the cybercrime in the CID headquarters. Actually cut the links between them and whoever they were actually conversing with.
So, if anyone is facing any form of cyberbullying or something that would defame them in the sense of naked pictures, they would just simply need to call up the cybercrimes unit and they will be able to handle it.
Yes,
I believe most people don't think or believe that there are laws in place, cybercrime laws. But from what I'm gathering, we do have laws in place to protect the rights of individuals within this country.
Yes,
Yeah?
because the cybercrime, they have the expertise to call those people who own the Facebook and they have links there.
Okay.
So because everything that goes in Facebook belongs to
Yeah, Facebook.
Facebook, yes, and they have contacts with them for them to cut off that to sever that links.
Okay. So just wrapping up this evening in our discussion, if there's one thing each of you would like to tell students or parents that are watching tonight, what would it be? Like,
Now, Matthew, I would like to ask the parents or the guardians if they can relook at their roles and responsibilities again, if they can be good role models to their students, especially during the school days, because the values that we trying to teach the students at home, the students, they normally catch the values. We may teach them, but they catch. So I would like to have, if there's a piece of advice, spend more quality time with them while they're here with you during these 7 weeks of school holidays. Get close to them, try to know them and understand them. And for the wife and husband, please stay together for the sake of the children. Because some cases that we've been receiving in school, when the parents, when they separate, the child is traumatized with that kind of incident.
Thank you, Matthew. For me, I think supervision.
supervision.
Yeah, there is incidences where children get into trouble when they are not supervised by parents. That would be for me, and I'd ask that we just be more vigilant with the children, with our children. And for our partners, I would just like to encourage reporting, so that we can help save a child.
Yes, for the Fiji police, actually, on behalf of the Fiji police, actually I will say that to all those that are out there, drugs is not the answer to everything. We have other things that you can do apart from that, and always listen to your parents. Always listen to them. That is the number one thing that the youths and the children have to do right now. You know, the fourth commandment. You know? You have to listen to your parents. That is the number one thing. And as she has said, reporting. If there is anything wrong with the family or surroundings in regards to drugs, in regards to anything, please report.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming this evening and joining me on the show. That's all we have time for, and we hope you enjoyed the show. And from the team and I, have a good evening.